Yeah, there are remedies that we can use for almost anything. I use quite a bit a homeopathic potency of X-ray, and if a person's had a lot of X-rays, then sometimes that remedy can be very helpful, but it also can, because homeopathy works on what's called the principle or the law of similars. If something is similar, then it will still have a potential benefit. And so sometimes when people come in talking about EMF exposure, I might give them a potency of X-ray, but there are new remedies being developed all the time in homeopathy. I mean, we have something like 3,000 remedies, and many of them have thousands of symptoms listed, from the mind through to the head, then to the toes, and everything in between. And so, you know, it's a massive database beyond any one person's mind to hold it all, and that's why these days we have techniques like the computer repertorization, which means we can put in key symptoms and then the computer will sort the remedies that are associated with those symptoms, and you might put in, say, 8 symptoms, and that will then give you a matrix showing the remedies that best cover those particular symptoms, and then you can, you know, manipulate it. Like in the old days when I started, it was all done by hand, and I've got a thick repertory which is just about fallen apart because it's over 30 years old and has been used many times. And that's what we used to do. Sometimes we'd have to take a case for an hour or so, then go away for another hour or so and sit down and do these, you know, quite complicated repertorial matrices. These days with the computers, you can do all of that in 10 minutes. So it makes it much quicker and much easier. And the repertories are developing all the time and new remedies are being brought in. But I want to just go back to a point you just said about, you know, homeopathy possibly being used not as a last resort, but earlier on in the process. And just make a general point that a lot of people who are trying to conceive, they spend a huge amount of effort trying to become as healthy as possible, which is a really good thing to do, by the way. But for most people these days still, healthy means, you know, you can run, not necessarily a marathon, but you can go jogging, you can do push-ups, you eat good food, you try and minimize exposure to toxins on every level, etc., etc. They don't always remember that health means emotional health and intellectual health. And, you know, certainly homeopathy can work on the physical side of things, but very importantly, it can work on those deeper things, as we talked about earlier. And very often, you know, if there is that blockage on that more subtle level, maybe from infancy or childhood, until that's removed, the benefit of physical health will not be fully appreciated, will not be fully able to be used by the whole system. Because, you see, our God-given self-healing mechanism has an inward intelligence that will always try and heal this most serious thing first and the least serious thing last. Now, the least serious thing is our skin. The next level down in the hierarchy is the mucous membrane. So that's why sometimes when people get skin rashes or mucus discharges, that's a good sign. It's a sign that the system is trying to eliminate through the least critical organs. The most critical area of all is the will to live. So we have a massive range from, you know, the skin to the will to live and everything in between. But what the point I'm making is that if there is trauma on that very subtle level, the level of will, the level of peace of mind, for want of a better word, then the body's self-healing mechanism will put more energy to that than to the physical self. And so instead of healing and balancing being completed on the physical self, even if the person is having a good diet and supplements and exercise, etc., if most of their healing energy is going to that emotional trauma, then you need to get rid of that. You need to help heal that on that very subtle level. And then the physical body will receive all the self-healing capacity that it can. And you see, one of the lovely things about homeopathy is that both the patient and the practitioner don't need to know exactly what's there, what's wrong, or what's happened. Very often, adult patients come in and they know that something happened, but they don't know what. You don't need to recover the memory to be able to work on that. What you need to be able to do is understand how the person's current symptoms are reflecting what's wrong. And this is one of the great contributions Dr. Hahnemann made, was to show really clearly that we don't need to work out theories of this, that, or something else and be correct for the medicine to help, as long as we understand how what has happened is now expressing itself through the symptoms of the patient. To Dr. Hahnemann, the symptoms were everything, because they were the body's self-healing mechanisms attempt to produce a positive result. They were showing how that individual person was reacting to the stress that they experienced. You might have 10 people who experience trauma in infancy, and they'll need 10 different remedies, because they manifest, their own self-healing mechanism is manifesting the symptoms differently. And as the symptoms change, the needed remedy changes. And that's the beauty of homeopathy when it's practiced in its pure state, in its truly classical state, is that the practitioner will spend the time necessary to really understand the changes that have occurred to the extent that it's able, the timing. And it's like being a detective. When I take a case, I always ask people, when symptoms changed, how old were you? And it's amazing how often you'll say, oh, did you realize that that change occurred the same year that this thing happened? Oh, I never thought of that before. It's amazing how often that simple little connection can really open up a case, because some sort of trauma happened to a person or immense change. Symptoms change. It might have been chronic headaches. It might have been a change in the menstrual cycle, which was not immediately related to the change because they might have been some months later. But if you put them together in the whole history of the person's life and say, okay, that is a point of change in your symptom history, and that is very likely the cause. So we'll treat that cause. Now, if you treat the cause and the symptoms change again, you know that you've dealt with at least part of the problem. Does that make sense?